Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Canadiens Connection Podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. My name is Michael Spinella, and I'll be your host for the next hour. This is episode 283 of the Canadiens Connection Podcast, and I'm very pleased to be joined in the studio by my co-host, the editor of the Hockey News Montreal, the founder and the president of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. And Rick, how are you doing today?
I'm in a great mood, thanks. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. It's been a busy week with games. We've had 4 since the last time we talked. It's been a while since we've had a busy week like that.
Yeah, it's been a very busy week. Lots of news. Our focus last week was on one Juraj Slafkovsky and the Canadiens' top line, and they continue to be red hot. Today we're taking a little bit a different focus. We're putting the spotlight on a different part of the Montreal Canadiens organization, really.
Exactly. So in this first segment, we'll make sure that you get all the way up to date on the Montreal Canadiens. Like I said, 4 games to talk about, some updates in the roster news. We'll talk about prospects, and of course some news from around the NHL. And then in segment 2, we have one Patrick Williams who's going to step in and join the show to talk about defense and goaltending. So looking forward to that conversation. And of course, in segment 3, we'll turn it over to our listeners. We got quite a bit of reaction to last week's episode about Juraj Slafkovsky. So we'll hear some comments from some viewers on YouTube, and then of course a couple tweets. Let's also turn it over to our listeners with a brand new question of the week. Our Canadiens Connection question of the week this time is: which up-and-coming defenseman do you think will eventually make a bigger impact on Montreal's blue line? David Reinbacher, Lane Hutson, or Logan Mailloux? We want to make sure that we hear from all of our viewers and listeners. And Rick, what's the best way for people to reach out to us?
Best way to reach out to us is our text line. It's the Rocket Sports text line. You can reach us 24 hours a day. It's 5853-ROCKET. Easy to remember, 5853-ROCKET. I'll say it one more time, 5853-ROCKET. If you have anything you want to talk about, any comments on today's show, and yes, it's episode 283. We're calling it Behind the Blue Lines. The Canadiens' focus, Canadiens' defense and goaltending is the focus.
You can also find us on social media. Just make sure you're following @Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And we have a website you can check out. It's canadiensconnection.fm. Make sure that you're also checking out our comprehensive pregame previews and postgame recaps for every Montreal Canadiens game at thn.com/Montreal. That's the hockey news for Montreal. Turning the clock back all the way to February the 10th, Dallas comes to town, visits Montreal, and it's a 3-2 Dallas win. Alex Newhook made his return to the lineup. All 5 goals came in the second period. For Montreal, it was Suzuki and Slafkovsky, and for the Dallas Stars, 2 goals from Tyler Seguin, 1 from Thomas Harley. The Habs were outshot 38-20, so not the best showing for the Montreal Canadiens in that one, and really not a whole lot outside of that second period.
Yeah, it was maybe not the best start for one Sam Montembeault, the Thomas Harley goal right through the 5-hole, and he was beating himself up on that one. He nodded his head, banged his stick. He clearly wanted that back. The other memorable incident, unfortunately, was a friendly fire incident where Rafael Harvey-Pinard ran into Yoel Armia, suffered a lower body injury, and he did not return to that game.
So it was a back-to-back with 1 p.m. starts. The very next day, the St. Louis Blues come to town, and it's a 7-2 St. Louis win. The Blues pretty much had a hold on the game right from the start. The Blues went 3 for 5 on the power play. For Montreal, Suzuki does continue his point streak, putting up a goal. The Blues just in general proved to be too much for the Montreal Canadiens to handle, and way too many D-zone errors that Montreal inflicted upon themselves.
Yeah, and the St. Louis power play was dominant throughout. As you mentioned, scoring 3 goals. But right off the puck drop, 25 seconds into the game, Alexei Toropchenko welcomed Jaden Struble to the NHL, just went right around him and got the first goal and never really looked back. I guess another injury in this game, this time to Jordan Harris. Sammy Blais was ejected for the hit, which he, in hindsight, looking back at the replays, Sammy Blais really didn't factor into this. It was Jordan Harris falling awkwardly behind the net, and then it was when he fell backwards and the back of his helmet hit the ice. Maybe concussion symptoms, we don't know, but. He was very wobbly, again, it was Josh Anderson. Josh Anderson has had a season. He's had quite a season in that. He went that. How many games at the beginning of the season? 27 or thereabouts. Without a goal, had a hot December, scored 6 times, and since then only has 1 goal in his last 16 games. He was a -4 in that game, and isn't contributing in the goal scoring and isn't contributing in any other way. He's not looked good since the clock turned to, or the calendar turned to 2024.
The third game this week comes on February the 13th. Anaheim comes to town, and Montreal wins 5-0. The Ducks were just awful. Only 13 shots on net. The easiest shutout that Caden Primo will ever have in his career. Suzuki managed to put up a pair of goals, and right at the end, Brendan Gignac scores his very first NHL goal. I think that this was a case of Anaheim was that bad as opposed to Montreal being that good, but hey, they saw the opportunity, they took advantage and gave the home crowd something to cheer about. Yeah,
they certainly took advantage of the top line again, but 13 shots on goal for Anaheim, that's their lowest shot total for any game this season. As you said, they were just awful.
And the last game comes on February the 15th as Montreal heads out to New York to visit the Rangers, and it's a 7-4 New York Rangers win. Your good friend Chris Kreider scores a hat trick in this one as the New York Rangers score 4 goals in the second period, 3 in the third period, and actually the Habs outshot the Rangers 35-31. It was just goaltending that was the major difference here. Jonathan Quick, I think, had a pretty good time in net for the New York Rangers. Bit of a surprise story for them this season. And on the other end, Sam Montembeault just struggled a lot in this one. I'm not sure what was going on with him in that game.
Yeah, it was just a bad start for Montembeault, and it's unfortunate because for the first 30 minutes, Montembeault didn't see much of anything. I saw a clip from the Rangers broadcasters that were saying what an easy night it was for Montembeault, but then the Rangers broke through and really feasted on Montembeault. The Canadiens actually outshot the Rangers 35-31. They generated more high danger scoring chances. And if you look at expected goals from our friends at Natural Stat Trick, the Rangers' expected goals were 2.5. Montembeault gave up 7. You can tell it was a tough night for him. Also a tough night. He wasn't the only one. Michael Pezzetta, rough game. Joshua Waugh, rough game. And Arbor Xhekaj didn't look very good in this game at all.
Absolutely. So with that, the Canadiens' record 21-21-8, only going up to 52 points this week, 25th in the NHL. And now the Habs have a 0.6 chance of making the playoffs this season. That's on pace for 78 points. And things certainly spiraling downward a little bit here, right?
Yeah. 0.6, that's not very good. That's not likely to happen, right?
Yeah, I think so. So make sure that you check out Habs Notepad. Habs headlines, feature articles, and game day posts appearing regularly at thn.com/Montreal. Taking a look at roster news for this week, as we talked about briefly, Joshua Waugh was recalled from the Laval Rocket. This came just before the game against St. Louis. That's his second call-up this season, I believe, and in his last 5 NHL games, 0 points and a -7.
Yikes.
Rafael Harvey-Pinard will be out 4 to 6 weeks with a lower body injury. He's been placed on injured reserve. It's been a tough season overall for RHP. Injuries have been an ongoing issue for him. He left the game against Dallas on Saturday after that collision with teammate Yoel Armia. Hoping that he can recover, but certainly after the excitement he brought fans last season, he's not lived up to expectations.
No, that's right. Even when he's been in the lineup, he hasn't contributed in the way. And listen, he had an ideal situation last season for stretches, being placed on the first line, parked himself in front of the net, caused havoc, and picked up some points. Just hasn't been the same this season at all.
Brendan Gallagher returned to the lineup against the New York Rangers after serving a 5-game suspension. It's nice that they got a warm body back in the lineup with injuries starting to pile up. It's nice to see Gallagher there. Tough season for Gallagher overall. I thought he had a great start back in October, but since then it's really just been heading in a downward spiral too.
It's really interesting hearing Brendan Gallagher's comments going as he returned to the lineup, saying that he didn't want to do that again. He didn't like the 5-game suspension, and of course that kind of went into the All-Star game break, and so it was a long time for him to be off the ice, away from his teammates, and out of action. And he said that when he saw the incident, him hitting Adam Pelech, elbowing him, he said he didn't recognize himself, and I guess that's the purpose of a suspension, is to allow a player to think and be contrite, and that certainly was the effect with Brendan Gallagher.
For sure. Jordan Harris is day-to-day with an upper body injury. He missed Thursday's game against the New York Rangers. He was hit by Sammy Blais against the St. Louis Blues on the Sunday. To be honest, like you said, this was more about Jordan Harris falling awkwardly behind the net as opposed to any damage that Sammy Blais did to him.
Yep, I agree. And as we said, speculation is that it's a concussion, so it's difficult to predict a timeline for him. Good news is that on Friday, he was on the ice for about 45 minutes in full equipment, skating on his own. So at least he's making his way back to the lineup.
Definitely. And some good news, some more positive news for the Montreal Canadiens. Nick Suzuki was named the NHL's 3rd star of the week last week. Coming in 1 and 2 are Sergei Bobrovsky and Jakub Markstrom. Suzuki earns that number 3 star as he put up 6 points in 3 games, and it just seems like Nick Suzuki's really turned things up. I'm excited to see if he can get some consistency there, because if he keeps playing like this, he might actually be a bona fide number 1 center. Well,
let's see how that turns out. And right now he's projected for a 79-point season. We always talk about the Canadiens being lacking a point-a-game player. Right now, Nick Suzuki is flirting with those projections.
For sure. Taking a look at Trade Watch, we're going to start doing this periodically as we lead up to the trade deadline. The guy we want to talk about this week is one Jake Allen. So the Jake Allen trade speculation has been going on, I think, for the majority of the season. Taking a look at some trade boards on TSN's trade bait list, Jake Allen comes in at number 11. Chris Johnston's trade board on The Athletic, he has Jake Allen coming in at number 9. I don't see any other Habs on this list. The only thing I'll point out is there is another goalie on TSN's trade list, and that's one Jakub Markstrom. So I think that if you have the choice between Markstrom and Allen, Markstrom's obviously the better goaltender. It's possible that that's holding up a Jake Allen trade, but I don't want to speculate too much about that. But I know there were some updates in regard to Jake Allen and a potential trade, right?
Yeah, I think but just first you mentioned Markstrom, and I think we've seen that New Jersey is clearly interested in Jakub Markstrom. They don't seem to be getting close, and New Jersey, like other teams, are going to have a backup plan, and so Jake Allen would fit nicely, as part of that plan. UC Saros is said to be available. John Gibson, of course, and we saw this week that midweek it was reported that Colorado was finalizing a deal on Jake Allen. Those reports kind of fell apart. Chris Johnston reported that no, they weren't close, but that there was some discussion. It's a bit complicated with respect to Jake Allen. He does have a partial no trade clause, and obviously Kent Hughes has a package in mind that he wants to get back, has a number in mind, has something in mind, and he's going to hold out until he gets it. And with respect to the goalie market, we're going to hear from Kent Hughes in just a minute. As far as other players, and we talked last week how Darren Dreger has mentioned David Savard and Josh Anderson. Josh Anderson, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, is having an awful season, and at that salary level, that would be a miraculous trade for Kent Hughes to make. Is moving Josh Anderson. 3 years left after this season at 5.5. I don't think that's going to happen. David Savard, yes, would be a nice fit. One more year after this, if there's a team that's wanting a player with term, Kyle Dubas likes to do that, and other GMs. 3.5 million on his. He's had some injury issues this season. Fractured hand, was out in November, December. But he's still averaging 20 minutes a game, leads the Canadiens in block shots per game. So David Savard is a possibility. I want to mention this. I've been saying this amongst our Rocket Sports colleagues and to other people around the NHL, that I think it's going to be Tanner Pearson, that Kent Hughes is going to try hard to move Tanner Pearson. I don't see him on any trade bait boards, but he's that kind of veteran that you can add and be a Swiss Army knife. He's, for the Canadiens, played the power play and PK, and might fit into a playoff bound team. He has an expiring contract, and at $3.25 million. So with all of these, whether it's Allen, whether it's Savard, whether it's Tanner Pearson, you might think that the Canadiens will have to withhold salary in order to make it palatable before he can move. Kent Hughes can move the player. We'll just remind you that 2 of the 3 of the retention slots are already used. They're used in trades for Jeff Petrie and Joel Edmondson. So would he like to make more than one trade? And he can, as long as there's not salary retention. But in those trades, there's only one that he can retain salary, or as he's said, he'll take on cap by acting as a third party broker kind of thing. So that's our trade watch, and that hasn't changed much since last week, other than the fact there was briefly a flurry of news on Jake Allen that kind of fizzled as the day went on.
Yeah, and we'll have some audio coming from Kent Hughes a little bit later in the segment. For now, I think it's actually a good time to get to this week's winners and losers.
And now it's time for this week's winners and losers on the Canadiens Connection.
And I think this time it's more of a just winners. I don't think we found any losers this week. We're feeling pretty optimistic about things, to be honest.
It's Valentine's Day and all of that. We were just in a good mood.
Yeah, that's fair. So starting off with a runner-up as winner, we had to give Connor McDavid a shout-out here. Recorded 6 assists on Tuesday night as the Oilers win 8-4 against the Detroit Red Wings. And when I know that some people think that assists are a little bit overrated, but when it's Connor McDavid and you're doing like 2 spinoramas to make the perfect pass, I think that it's more than worth it. So what did you have to say about Connor McDavid on Tuesday?
No, I'm 100% with you. We'll be glad to give a stick tap to 6 assists in one game.
So for our actual winners of the week, we have one apiece. I'll start off with mine. I'm going to give some stick taps to the PWHL. As just last night on Friday, February the 16th, they set a record-setting attendance as a Montreal team visited Toronto, and they packed Scotiabank Arena with a little bit over 19,000 fans. Toronto ended up beating Montreal 3-0, but a great game overall. And I think just stick taps because this is another pretty competitive hockey league that's at least gaining a lot of traction in Canada. I definitely encourage people to check it out if you haven't already. That Montreal team is quite physical. It's a good time to watch and a different style of hockey. So I'm just excited. More hockey to watch, more exciting hockey to cheer about. And that's what's got me all excited on this Saturday.
That's a great pick.
And what do you have to say for your winner this week, Rick?
For me, I have Jackson Stauber. We like to talk about goaltenders, and we have a theme running today that we're talking about defensemen and goaltenders. Jackson Stauber is a goaltender in the Chicago Blackhawks organization, playing for the Chicago Ice Hogs currently. He did something last night that no other player has ever done, nor the goaltender has ever, no other player too, has ever done in the AHL. And we've got some audio from the play-by-play announcer for the Chicago Ice Hogs. His name is Mike Foda.
70 seconds left in the game. Still a 3-0 contest. This is Alex Green from the red line. He dumps it in. They give him the benefit of the doubt. Stauber shoots at the empty net. Scores! The Swiftie in his golden era. Jackson Stauber, a goalie goal.
We like goalie goals.
I'm into it.
Jackson Stauber with a goalie goal, and a legit. We remember Strauss-Mann got credited for a goal early in the season for Laval. This was a legit goalie goal. He fished the puck from the boards behind the net, spun around, and fired the puck the length of the ice into the Chicago Wolves goal, and that gave Rockford a 4-0 win over their rivals. And so 4-0, that means that Jackson Stauber also got a shutout. So he is the first goaltender in AHL history to score a goal and record a shutout in the same game. Absolutely remarkable. And Rem Pitlick was there on the bench in his first game for the Ice Hogs, watching it all happen. That's great for Rem. And interestingly enough, where do we know that name, Jackson Stauber, from?
Is it because he's a Swiftie? Or?
See, that went right over my head, completely over my head. But I'm glad you caught that. No, his dad, Rob, was also a goaltender. And he played a little bit in the NHL. I remember mostly from the Los Angeles Kings. He played, let me check here, 62 games in the NHL and 132 games in the AHL. And he also got a goalie goal, if you can believe it. That Rob Stauber had a goalie goal for Rochester on October 9th, 1995. But we know Jackson Stauber because if you think back a year ago, February, we know that the Chicago Blackhawks were the worst team in the NHL last year. We know it by the record. We know it because they got Connor Bedard. But there was a threat to that terrible record, and it was one Jackson Stauber. The Chicago Blackhawks went through a number of goalies. They had Alex Stalock, who was, I think he had concussion problems. Peter Mrazek was injured, and so they recalled Jackson Stauber from the Ice Hogs, and he came up end of January into February and went on a run. He was 5-1-0, won 5 of 6 of his starts, 281 goals against, 911 save percentage, and he was a sensation. And on Valentine's Day, the Blackhawks met the Canadiens, and he had a 5-1 record. Well, the only loss he had was a 4-0 shutout by the Canadiens. He got no goal support, and that was the only start that he lost. But now, yes, there's a Canadiens connection there. But now, a year later, he is scoring a goal and recording a shutout, all in the same game. So we wanted to tip our hat to one Jackson Stauber.
Yeah, absolutely incredible story. Certainly a great goalie prospect there for the Chicago Blackhawks. And speaking of prospects, I think it's a good time to get to our Habs prospect report.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world. Bookmark thn.com/Montreal to follow our comprehensive coverage of Canadiens prospects.
So each week we like to highlight a Montreal Canadiens prospect, and this week we will shine the spotlight on Rögle defenseman Adam Engstrom, keeping along the theme of defensemen that you'll see throughout this episode. He was drafted in the 3rd round, 92nd overall in 2002. This season, 17 points in 41 games. Known to be a very solid puck mover and a guy that just has the ability to make the right pass at the right time. His stats, I don't think necessarily show all the contributions he makes for his team, as he's certainly been an anchor on that back end, and certainly an interesting prospect to look out for. Someone we'll probably have to be patient for. And Rick, what are your thoughts on one Adam Engstrom?
He is an interesting prospect, and some of our listeners probably weren't aware until the development camp, and he's a very creative player, as you said, a puck mover. It's his skating that is outstanding, and helps him with his offensive game. Last season he was top 4 for Rögle, and this season he's got a much bigger role. He's playing on the top pair. He's averaging 20 minutes a night. He's manning the power play, and it's his offense that is his calling card. His skating ability, his ability to create offense. The only thing is if his teammates would be more helpful, if his shooting percentage is just above 4%. If that was a little bit higher, you'd be seeing the points come as well, I think. And it's with his defensive game is a work in progress, but he's made some strides there as well. And one of the things that I've noticed that he does well is, and I think this is to relate it to another puck-moving defenseman like Justin Barron, who's a good skater, moves the puck, all of that. I think Adam Engstrom, his ability to go and retrieve the puck, that's where Barron really struggles. And Engstrom can go in, retrieve the puck, and make that first pass, and that seems to be where he's made the most improvement. He still has to, make some adjustments to his game in terms of gap and using his size a bit more. So where's this going to end up? Well, some of the scouts are saying his ceiling may be a top 4 NHL defenseman. Probably, between that and a bottom pairing, which is not a bad thing to have, especially for the Canadiens. What was he, 92nd overall in the draft. So this is a project. This is somebody to keep our eyes on. And there's certainly no rush. I expect that he'll play again in Sweden next year. And there's a possibility he could even spend 2 more seasons. So we'll just keep updating you as his play improves and as he develops.
For sure. Last week we talked about the Beanpot tournament, and we have some updates on that as the Northeastern Huskies beat Boston University Terriers 4-3 in overtime at TD Garden. Boston College would beat Harvard 5-0 to take 3rd place in this tournament. And a pretty good tournament for one Lane Hutson, who scored one of Boston University's goals in the final. It was a pretty interesting game to watch. Of course, getting overtime in a final, you can't complain. But unfortunately, Boston comes up a little bit short there. And of course, with Lane Hutson on that team, he had a pretty big impact on everything that went on.
Absolutely, and it is an important tournament. Northeastern has it's 3 of the last 5. They've been dominant at that tournament. Boston University having a great season. Boston College, you mentioned, with Jakub Fowler having a great season as well. So it all is going to. We're getting close as we move forward to the Frozen Four entries, and we'll see how that whole Hockey East division turns out.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Jakub Fowler. Well, Hockey Commissioners Association announced the 10 semifinalists for the 2024 Mike Richter Award. And one of those that was nominated is one Jakub Fowler. So this is an annual award given to goaltenders voted to be most outstanding in their division. So a nice stick tap towards Jakub Fowler. And of course, Jakub Fowler getting a shutout to take 3rd place in that Beanpot tournament. Pretty good week for him too.
It is. He's had a great season, 21-5-1, 219 goals against, 925 save percentage, and 1 shutout. This is now Jakub Fowler is a freshman. There's only one other freshman on this list, and that's Trey Augustine. Remember that Fowler and Augustine were roommates actually during the World Juniors for Team USA. If we look at these 10 goaltenders, Fowler ranks 7th in save percentage nationally, 9th in goals against average. And the last time a Boston College goaltender made it to the top 10, it was Spencer Knight in 2021. As it turns out, Fowler is the only goaltender from Hockey East that made this semifinalist list, and we're going to keep an eye on this to see, once the award is made. That's a prestigious award, the Mike Richter Award. Even to be nominated as Fowler is a great recognition for him in his freshman year.
Continuing along with some goalie talk, both Laval Rocket goaltenders had some pretty good weeks. Going back to February the 10th, Laval visits the Toronto Marlies, and they come away with a 7-1 victory. Casimir Kaskazoo looked pretty solid facing off against his former team. For Laval, a pair of goals coming from both Nathan Legare and Xavier Simoneau. So a very good game there, and lots of goals to be scored. They had a few days off in between, and last night, Friday, February the 16th, Laval visits Hartford, and they come away with a 5-2 victory. Hat-trick coming from one of our favorites, and Jared Davidson, and of course, Jakub Dobes facing 36 shots and leading Laval to victory. So lots of goals being scored and lots of great goaltending in that Laval net.
Absolutely. Dobes was the difference on Friday night against Hartford. In the Hartford lineup was one Tyler Pitlick. First game in the AHL in something like 7 years. Was sent down by the Rangers this week. So both Rem and Tyler were playing in the AHL this week. Jared Davidson hat-trick his first multi-goal game in the AHL, and he was the 3rd star of the evening in the AHL. The first star, of course, was Jackson Stauber.
So Laval's record currently 21-19-4-2. That's 48 points and 22nd in the AHL. Coming up, pretty busy week on the 17th of February. Today, Saturday, Laval's going to be visiting Wilkes-Barre Scranton. On Sunday, February the 18th, Laval visits Bridgeport before they come back home on the 21st to host Hershey. And then they host the Toronto Marlies on the 23rd. So plenty of great hockey coming up for the Laval Rocket. The Trois-Rivières Lions, the ECHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, continue their downward spiral as their latest game on February the 10th is a loss to Norfolk. They lose 4-3 in that one. These struggles just seem to be coming from all areas. The goaltending they were getting at the beginning of the season has started to flatten out. They're not able to score like they did at the beginning of the season either. I know Laval has had some injuries and there have been some call-ups there, so perhaps it's just the personnel. But right now, the Trois-Rivières Lions have a record of 19-23-3-2. That's 11th place in the Eastern Conference.
And be sure to want to head to thn.com/Montreal. Monday, every Monday, is the Lions Notepad, and that's where Chris G takes a look at the previous week and gets you updated on everything that's happening in Trois-Rivières.
Looking at our QMJHL website, we also handle the Quebec Maritimes Junior Hockey League for the Hockey News. We've been doing an interesting series on Memorial Cup contenders that's being written by our own Mike Raschel. Look out for more articles to come up soon. And Rick, what can you tell us about what to expect here?
Well, as our readers, as fans of the QMJHL may not have the opportunity to see what's going on in the other leagues, the OHL, the Dub, and so what we're doing with Mike is taking a review of the contenders, the teams that the Q rep is likely to face once they get to the Memorial Cup. So this is the Memorial Cup Contender Series, and the OHL is so big that it's been split into two sets of articles last week about the Western Conference, this week about the Eastern Conference. Sudbury Wolves will be an article that comes out on Sunday that you might want to read.
So you can find all of our content about Canadiens prospects at thn.com/Montreal. And if you're looking for the best English language coverage of the Quebec Maritimes Junior Hockey League, head over to thn.com/QMJHL. And now it's time to get to our quotes of the week. The NHL trade deadline is less than 3 weeks away, so Canadiens GM Kent Hughes prepared on the Get Your Back podcast. So we have two audio bits. The first one, we were talking about Jake Allen earlier and how that situation has gone. There was a possible trade that could have happened earlier in the week. Of course, Chris Johnson mentioned that that wasn't particularly close and that died down. But how about this three-headed goaltending situation that Montreal has had all season? Kent, how are you planning to deal with this three-headed goaltending situation?
Yeah, we've been focused on looking for a trade partner to move a goalie out. The goaltending market hasn't been very active, as we know. I think there's there's so many. There are different elements to moving a goalie than just saying, "Hey, we got a goalie." You don't put a for sale sign outside your house, and your business is done in a day, so to speak. Clearly, with goaltending, the goalies are affected by a cap situation as well. So there's maneuverability issues. There's no trade issues. And there's just finding the right fit. So does it happen between now and the trade deadline? I've said it, multiple times here in our market. I can't promise that it will. Do I anticipate going into next season with three goalies? No. So between now and the start of next season, we plan to resolve the situation. But when that happens, it to a certain degree depends on those teams that are in the market for a goalie and whether they can make that happen.
So we wanted to play the entire clip there, a little bit longer than what we normally play, but to give you the full context of what Kent Hughes is how he's planning to deal with this 3 goalie situation, as he has been dealing with it all season long. We know they didn't want to expose Caden Primo to waivers, so didn't send him to Laval, and that's just, there's been a domino effect throughout the organization because of that. Now, with everything, remember, and we always remind you that Kent Hughes has said that he's going to leverage the media. So is he posturing here? Is he playing hard to get, that he's not desperate to move a goaltender, and in his negotiations with general managers, and who's to say? But what is different, I think, is that we heard at the beginning of the season that there was how long is this going to go on has always been the question, and whether it's been Jeff Gordon at the microphone or Kent Hughes, they've said, is it going to go on past Christmas? We don't know. Is it going to go? They've always said there's no way that this is going the entire season. We don't know when we're going to move the goaltender, but we're not going to have a 3 goalie situation for the entire season. However, Kent Hughes just changed that. He just moved those goals posts, and he said, "Are we going to go into next season with 3 goaltenders?" No. So they've moved, which opens up the possibility that this doesn't get resolved by the trade deadline, and that it's a summer trade. And listen, we're talking about Jake Allen, unless somebody puts in an offer on one of the others, but it's most likely Jake Allen that we're talking about here. And the issue there is, well, there's a few issues. Kent Hughes talked about the market, just isn't there, not very active, not a lot of teams, and seemingly enough goaltenders out there to satisfy that. He mentioned the issue of no trade. We know that Jake Allen has a partial no trade clause, so it has to be the right fit. A team that wants Jake Allen, and meaning a team that's not on Jake Allen's no trade list. So this has gone on much longer than I think all of us expected, including Kent Hughes. But it doesn't appear that they're in a rush to make it happen anytime soon.
We have one more clip coming from Kent Hughes, and in this one he's talking about term versus expiring contracts.
But I think at the end of the day, timing to another degree also depends on, as Pierre alluded to earlier, is somebody on an expiring contract, or does he have term left? When somebody's on an expiring contract and you're in a rebuild like we are, it's hard to let an asset walk out the door for free if there's value to that asset.
Very important what he says here, and he used the name Pierre. That's Pierre Lebrun, Ryan Rashog. Thanks for the clips to the Got Your Back podcast. 2 things that he says in here, and kind of explains the difference between players who have term, players who are on expiring contracts. Who's on an expiring contract for the Canadiens? That's Tanner Pearson. That's why I've said for a while now that it looks like Kent Hughes is trying to trade Tanner Pearson. And what did he say? Quote, "It's hard to let an asset walk out the door for free if there's value." So if he possibly can, and if there's any interest, Tanner Pearson is likely going to be traded by the trade deadline. The other thing that Michael and I were amused about was that he used the term rebuild like we are. He's tried to avoid that term, but didn't in this particular interview.
Yeah, I think that's a nice catch right there. So as we come up on the end of this first segment, we have some hockey news from around the league. Let's start off as the Rangers announced that one Blake Wheeler will be out for the rest of the season with a lower body injury. He collided with Jaden Struble on Thursday, so a bit of an odd situation. I don't think that this was necessarily something that Struble did, just kind of fell awkwardly, and a tough break for one Blake Wheeler there. I know he means a lot to that New York Rangers team.
And does that mean that the Rangers are going to have to go after a forward to replace Blake Wheeler. We know that and it's been reported that there's no love lost between the management of the Rangers and the management of the Canadiens. So this can't help. As you said, not that it was Jayden Strubal's fault, but that a Canadiens player put out Blake Wheeler. And I'll just make the point that it's been announced that he's out for the rest of the regular season, not necessarily the full season. So there is a possibility that he will be back for the playoffs if the Rangers go on a long run.
For sure. Big news out of Columbus is the Blue Jackets fired general manager Jarmo Kekalainen. As we approach the trade deadline, the Columbus Blue Jackets will have John Davidson step up and fill in that role of GM. I'd say it's pretty unlikely that they find a replacement before then, given the timing of it. It's kind of been an unfortunate year for Jarmo. Not the greatest offseason, and then hiring Mike Babcock at the beginning of the year, who unfortunately never got to be behind the bench for the Columbus Blue Jackets. I think that set the team back a little bit. And furthermore, the Columbus Blue Jackets as a team, their makeup just doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now. I think they were hoping for a step forward, but it's been more like a step back. Perhaps some patience is needed, as they do have some nice pieces coming along. Adam Fantilli, David Jiricek as well. So the future is bright. It's just, it's been a long time that Jarmo's been the GM of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Tough situation for him too, losing players like Bobrovsky, losing Artemi Panarin, having to trade his marquee third overall pick in Pierre-Luc Dubois as well. I think he's done the best that he can do. It's just been a difficult situation for the Columbus Blue Jackets.
No, I agree. I like Jarmo. I like some of the moves he's made. As you said, he's made the best at times of the circumstances he's been given. Columbus pretty reluctant to spend at times, but it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I always remember him in Buffalo standing up to Marc Bergevin over Pierre-Luc Dubois, and Marc Bergevin just begging for Dubois at that draft. As you said, John Davidson, the president's going to be handling the GM duties for now. There was some speculation that Jeff Gorton might be interested in that position because the Blue Jackets have a ton of talent, ton of prospects, ranked well above the Canadiens in terms of prospect talent. There's been no official word, but I'd find that. I think Jeff Gorton wants to see the job done in Montreal and before he would move on. For
sure. Probably the biggest news coming out of the past week is Toronto Maple Leafs defenseman Morgan Rielly was suspended for 5 games for a cross-check to the head of Ottawa Senators forward Ridley Gregg. Not going to lie, I think Ridley Gregg scoring on an empty net breakaway with a slap shot is probably one of the more entertaining things I've seen this year, especially against the Toronto Maple Leafs. That was pretty fun to see. Not sure why Morgan Rielly took so much exception to that, especially with his little to no effort to make a back check and prevent that goal from happening. I think if with a little bit more effort, he could have stopped Ridley Gregg from getting a breakaway, but he just decided to be lazy and focused more on revenge after the goal. So, of course, Rielly was given a 5-game suspension, and Rielly has appealed the suspension, waiting for a verdict here to see if this gets shortened at all.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you. No big deal. Ridley Gregg into the empty net. Morgan Rielly hitting him in the head with a cross check while the player was completely unaware and didn't have time to brace himself. 5 games should have been. I think it should have been 6 games. Yes, he's gone and appealed that. The appeal went in on Friday, and the Leafs were there, and Rielly was there, and the NHLPA sent their lawyers to argue to lower the suspension. The NHLPA is a despicable organization. I've said it before. What about where are they on protecting their players? Where are they in protecting Ridley Gregg's rights? He was the one that was the victim in this, and they're there arguing for a lower suspension for Morgan Riley. Of course, it's the Leafs, and Gary Bettman is deliberating, and don't be surprised if the suspension is reduced because it's the Leafs,
Yeah, I agree with you there. Honestly, I don't think that there would be a story or anything if this was any other team but the Toronto Maple Leafs. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
So some interesting reports being made by Gilbert Delorme on BPM Sports, and this kind of relates back to some Montreal Canadiens legends and Marc Bergevin. What happened here, Rick?
Well, we've heard before from Serge Savard and others that during the Marc Bergevin era, that the Canadiens alumni, the respected members of the Canadiens alumni, were disrespected. That has changed considerably under Jeff Gorton, particularly, and Kent Hughes as well. And Gilbert Delorme was a member of the Canadiens back in the early 80s. And he said, and I'll read his quote, with respect to how Marc Bergevin disrespected legends, Montreal Canadiens legends. Delorme said, Mr. Beliveau used to go through the players' locker room to reach the room where the alumni gather. For Marc Bergevin, it bothered him. He said to the security officer, I don't want Mr. Beliveau to come through the dressing room anymore because it disturbs the players. Flower, Guy Lafleur, used the players' parking lot, the parking garage, and that bothered Mr. Bergevin too, and Guy Lafleur was told that he could no longer park in the players' parking lot. So Beliveau, taking a shortcut through the players' dressing room to get to Bergevin outlawed that, and ended Guy Lafleur parking in the place. This is ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd. And it just goes, again, like I said, with Serge Savard and others who have spoken out about the way Marc Bergevin had disrespected Canadiens alumni and Canadiens legends.
Yeah, so just a weird situation. And who is Marc Bergevin to think that he should tell John Beliveau what to do? I personally would never think of telling John Beliveau to do anything. As far as I'm concerned, both of those guys can do whatever they want. And just a weird power trip coming from Marc Bergevin, I think. Absolutely,
100%. It's sad. It's really sad.
So with that, I think it's time to get to our first break here. We have a new message from our sponsors, DraftKings, and then it's our big topic segment in which we will welcome one Patrick Williams to the show. So stay with us. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
We know hockey games move fast, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Maybe you want to make a bet on 5 different players who are going to score a goal tonight. The opportunities are endless on DraftKings Sportsbook. There are so many different combinations, opportunities, specials, parlays, straight up money line bets, you name it. There's so many ways to play on DraftKings Sportsbook. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with the code THPN. New customers bet just $5 on the NHL and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2024. All rights reserved.
Welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. I'm Michael Spinella. You can find me on Twitter at the Spinella. With me in the studio is our president and founder of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. Make sure to give him a follow on Twitter at Rocket Sports. You can also follow this podcast at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and check out our website, CanadiensConnection.com, or CanadiensConnection.fm, rather. You can also make sure that you're subscribed to this podcast. It's the Canadiens Connection podcast on your favorite podcasting app or any one of your favorite players out there. So make sure that you hit subscribe. That way you never miss a single episode. And Rick, you and I last week on Canadiens Connection episode 282 focused on one of Montreal's top forward prospects, and Juraj Slafkovsky, and wondered if he would be the best player to come out of that 2022 draft. I think that was an interesting topic. It was nice to talk about forwards, but how about we talk about some defensemen and some goaltenders in this segment here. I know we have Patrick Williams waiting to get into the studio pretty soon, but let's set this up.
Yeah, Patrick Williams, as you know, he is, I call him the AHL guru. He writes about the AHL for NHL.com, writes for AHL.com, and we're lucky to have him as part of the Rocket Sports team, and you'll find him on the Rocket Hockey Report on our YouTube channel, and once a month he stops by the studio here to share his knowledge, and this time it's about Canadiens prospects, defensive prospects, goaltending prospects developing with the Laval Rocket in the AHL.
Yeah, and some of the names I'm looking forward to hearing about are Justin Barron, Logan Mailloux, Jakub Dobes, of course, and this conversation. It also touches on the potential of David Reinbacher heading to Laval this season, and the potentially one of the goaltender that got away in one Yaroslav Askarov. So without further ado, I'm pretty excited to welcome him to the show. This is one Patrick Williams.
Thanks, Michael. Very pleased once again to invite Patrick Williams. You've heard him before. He's the AHL writer for NHL.com, the writer extraordinaire at AHL.com, and he's a contributor to Rocket Sports. And once a month, he visits us here at the Canadiens Connection. We're always happy to welcome Patrick Williams to this show. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me back.
We're glad to have you back. I'm doing fine, thanks. And I thought it was kind of fortuitous that we have you on just after the it's like a week after the Super Bowl, because I have it on good authority that you are also an NFL fan.
That is, your sources are correct.
So I'm sure you're glued to the Super Bowl, as I was. Not that I necessarily had a rooting favorite. The Minnesota Vikings were not in the Super Bowl this year. What did you think of the game, and were you rooting for any team in particular?
Didn't have a strong rooting preference, probably leaning more toward the Niners. If I had to, really pick one side. First 2.5, 3 quarters I thought were kind of flat, right?
Yeah.
It seems that way a lot in the Super Bowl. I don't know if it's the 2-week break or maybe obviously the pressure and maybe the different nature of the game and, all the interruptions and all the hype and, the different type of, routine leading up to things and the, the halftime that stretches on. But yeah, they seemed both teams seemed a little bit flat. For better part of the game, and then things really picked up toward the end of the fourth quarter. Then obviously into overtime, and Kansas City just what now 3 and 5 years.
And looking for another next season. One of the things that you love the Super Bowl, one of the things you're not so happy with is the length of the off season.
Yes.
If reading your tweets is any indication. Somebody who's going to be very busy, I expect, in the off season is one Tom Brady, who's going to move to the booth and take over as a Fox commentator for Greg Olsen. You're a little bit of a Brady fan, I think. How do you think? How do you think that's going to work out? Tom moving to be a commentator, a broadcaster.
Well, I think if he's himself, and kind of maybe a little similar to how he is on this podcast, I think it will go well. I think if he holds back, as you sometimes see with ex-players, they either, don't want to criticize, old teammates or friends, or they just don't want to rock the boat, then probably won't go so well. But, hopefully he'll follow the former approach and really, be willing to, I sort of maybe compare it to like a Ray Ferraro, hockey comparable, where he'll really you try to serve the viewer, right, as opposed to being concerned about stepping on the toes of your buddies or teams, or sometimes you see broadcasters that are hoping to work back in the business, right? And they don't want to ruffle any feathers, and so if Brady takes the approach, I think of I'm here to give the viewers the best broadcast possible, rather than having maybe sort of a different set of priorities. Then I think he'll be great. So hopefully. We'll see, though. I know he's replacing, a very popular commentator in Greg Olsen. So, big shoes to fill there, obviously. Sort of a tough role coming in, like, as the number one. We were talking about this before, like you're getting all the top games at, 425 and, the top matchups. And, so you're not getting, kind of a little bit more of a soft introduction into things, right? Like they're throwing you right into the frying pan. So that will be, I guess, sort of the thing to keep an eye on. And the off season is just longest off season in sports, right? I mean, you got solid 5.5 months just to get to training camp, and then that runs about 6 weeks or so between preseason and everything. Then finally you get the games going, but it's it's a long. That's always sort of the thing with the Super Bowl that I don't love. It's just it's that last break or that last game before the long break. So that's always kind of the flip side of the Super Bowl for me.
Well, the offseason for Minnesota Vikings fans, which I have on good authority, there are about 3 of them who listen to this podcast. We'll be watching to see if Kirk Cousins re-signs as quarterback, or whether the Canadiens, the Vikings will try to move up in the draft and select a quarterback, of which there are 3 or 4 this time around. So, but I agree with you. The offseason way too long, and our offseason advice for Tom Brady is tell the truth, speak your mind, much as we do here on the Canadiens Connection. So you're here for hockey. We should move to talk about a little bit of hockey. And just before we started the podcast, I was reminded that it's one of those rare, quirky kind of things that exist in the AHL for the Laval Rocket this weekend that doesn't exist in the NHL, and that's the infamous 3-3. That's 3 games in 3 days, and for the Laval Rocket, 3 away games in 3 different cities in the U.S. So tell us about the 3-3 in the AHL, and in particular with Laval going to Hartford, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, and Bridgeport this weekend.
Yeah, the infamous 3-3 is a very good way to put it. I believe this is one of, I want to say only 3 this year for the Rocket. They used to be extremely commonplace around the AHL, especially during the 80-game format that ended around, I want to say, 2011. There also used to be 4 and 5s, and here's a kind of really going into the weeds. There used to be, at least for a small stretch in the late 80s, 4 and 4s.
Oh boy!
So with significant travel too, as well.
Wow.
I mean, so it's been a real priority, in the last decade plus, to really try to keep the 3-3s to an absolute minimum. And they got rid of the 4 and 5s altogether. They're not allowed anymore. And certainly the 4 and 4s went by the wayside a long time ago, just because that's just not even fair, right? I mean,
yeah.
It's not fair to the players. It's not fair to the fans, right? I mean, in terms of the product, right? Put them on the ice 4 times, and we say 4 and 4. A lot of times it's 4 and 3.5, really.
With the afternoon.
Yeah. Usually, pretty much any Sunday games, either a 1, a 3, or a 5 o'clock start, maybe a 4 o'clock. So this weekend is more of a throwback weekend for the Laval Rockets. They start in Hartford, go all the way west to Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, and then kind of trace their way back to Bridgeport, for an afternoon game. So, for a team that's obviously, in a playoff fight, I don't think it's too early to say that the stretch drive period really has started now. We're about, I'm going to say, a little over 2 months from the end of the regular season. So if you divide the season into thirds, it's starting this weekend. And it's certainly not an easy weekend whatsoever. You're getting 2 quality clubs right off the bat, in Hartford and Wilkes-Barre, and then you get Bridgeport, obviously a team at the bottom of the Atlantic Division, but you get them at the back end, in their building. So it's certainly going to be a challenge for the Rockets, just to certainly to come out, and that's why it's such a challenge in this league. Coaches will harp time and time again about consistency. Well, one of the biggest kind of enemies of consistency is the schedule when the games start to pile up, and that's when bad habits creep in. That's when players slip, and that's certainly something the Rocket and the coaching staff will have to be on guard against.
Well, and it's overall the 3-3. If that's not bad enough, the Rocket are coming off of 2 games in Toronto. The Marlies being a long-standing rival. After the 3-3, Laval will go home, but they'll host a midweek game with Hershey, best team in the league, and then right back at it with the Marlies for another weekend series. So this is certainly physically tiring, but also the mental aspect of the opponents that they're going to be facing over this 2-week stretch.
Yeah, and then they go right back on the road, go back, to basically almost retrace this weekend, right? You get Bridgeport, Hartford, and then you get Springfield. But you're right. I mean, right after you get back, so they play Sunday afternoon. You're done there, maybe 6:30. You get on the road. It's a long trip back to Laval. you're not getting home to the early hours of Monday morning. And then Wednesday, right? Yeah, you're right. You're right back at it against a Hershey club that is on a record-setting pace this year. Literally a team that could conceivably set a new standard. The league mark for a season is 775 in terms of point percentage. They're playing 792 at the moment. For a good portion of the year, they've been over the 800 mark. So that's a team that you're coming home right off the bat, after a long, tough road trip. And you have to face the Hershey Bears, who are sitting there waiting for you. And then, like you said, you have the Marlies, a team that you're trying to fend off, possibly for a playoff spot. It may come down at some point to you and the Marlies battling for that number 4, number 5 spot. You got Belleville in there, you got Rochester hanging around in third spot, and then you have Utica, who's trying to get themselves together as well. So this is an arduous stretch, and then March is an absolutely packed schedule. So this, I would say the stretch drive officially, you can start to say, begins this weekend for the Laval Rockets. So buckle up.
Well, good advice, and we expect that one of the players that JF Houle is going to be relying on in this 3-3 on defense is Justin Barron. He'll expect to be in all 3 games. One of the, I guess, Justin Barron didn't expect that he was going to be in Laval. Played 41 games with the Montreal Canadiens, and then it was thought it was an opportune time to send him down for a little bit of work at the AHL level. I think he was surprised. And maybe a little unhappy, and that's probably a good sign. He's played eight games so far for the Laval Rocket. How have you seen him adapting and adjusting and maybe growing in Laval for the last couple of weeks?
Well, I mean, the first thing you want to see, right, is a young defenseman. He's 22 years old. You want to see him get a ton of playing time, and that's exactly what he's been able to get since coming down. He had the All-Star break in there a little bit to maybe slow that schedule down a little bit, but early on, he came in and played 4 games his first week with the team, and now you're getting a 3-3. So, and I mean, like you said, they'll be relying heavily on a player like him to handle, probably upwards of 25 minutes a night.
Yeah.
Where to really take on some of that workload, and that's exactly what a young defenseman who's like you said, probably disappointed to come down, but is still in a lot of ways still trying to really get a true foothold at the NHL level. And this is a great opportunity for him. And, if you come down, any young defenseman, or any young prospect period, if you come down and really embrace it and look at it not as a demotion, but as an opportunity, it could be a great springboard. And I think the players that get into trouble are the ones that come down and take a month or so to kind of get their head back, in the game and pout, or just view it as a demotion rather than an opportunity. Those are the ones that tend to struggle. So so far so good for him, and this will kind of be another test for him, handling this 3-3. And then like we said, then you got Hershey coming in, and it's a great opportunity to go up against the top team in the league and match up against them. So he's a player that obviously you're going to count all situations, just to be a real force out there, and kind of an equalizer. He's a player that you can match up against an opponent's top line, or you can put out there in the last 2 minutes of a game where they're either you're trying to protect a lead or you're trying to, come back. So, yeah, I like where he's at right now, and we'll see where this goes, for him, this weekend.
Let's stick with defensemen in Laval. And last time you were here, we talked considerably about Logan Mailloux. Since you were last here, Logan Mailloux has been to the All-Star game. He was the Rockets' representative at the AHL All-Star Challenge. He just seems to be rolling right along. 32 points in 45 games, and it just looks very comfortable, and kind of looks like if there was going to be a call-up, if another call-up was necessary by the Canadiens, that you never know, Logan Mailloux could be next on the list.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it continues to be just a great first season for him. And I talk about this all the time with young defensemen in this league. It's that ability to assert yourself, the ability to not just kind of be a spectator, not just be somebody that goes out there trying to not make a mistake, but somebody that goes out there and pushes the play. And I think that's what he's been able to do. And that's always a big challenge for young defensemen in this league, especially. This league will eat up young defensemen, right? We've seen it with the first round picks. It's a difficult league in that regard. And a player that brings composure, I think, is the other thing too, right? And coaches at this level are probably for their own, stress levels are looking for that in terms of, someone that they can trust, right? I've talked about this with a number of coaches, kind of when does that trust factor really start to kick in with a young player, where he goes from, a player that you hope will get the job done, whatever the situation might be, to someone that you know or you feel very confident can get the job done. And it can vary with players, obviously, but I feel like Mailloux is in that stage now where you can throw him over the boards, and if you're JFO, you can feel that. You can feel good about that, and you can have that confidence that he's going to certainly handle whatever you throw at him. So, yeah, I think between Barron, some of the other young decor you have in the system that slowly but surely now, and this has kind of been a theme that we've always been hammering. The Habs haven't always had a whole lot in the system, and now this year it really does feel like, okay, it is some of the younger players, the high-end prospects that are really starting to lead the way. Now,
in the system is another defenseman by the name of David Reinbacher, playing in the National League. And it's been a difficult season. I think that's fair to say. For David Reinbacher, had injury issues. There's been a change of coaches, 3 different coaches in Cloton, and but you mentioned that the AHL is a league that can eat up young players, young defensemen, first-round picks. David Reinbacher, 5th overall, and they're, I guess, the maybe silver lining of David Reinbacher's season is there is an expectation that probably next month the Canadiens will bring him over and let him play a few games in Laval. I don't want you to necessarily talk about David Reinbacher himself, but what is that like for a player coming over from Europe, especially one where there's high expectations, and be thrown into a lineup, but be thrown onto a moving train? If Laval is still in the playoff hunt, and as you said, a tough league for a young man of just 19 to be thrown in that situation.
It can be very difficult, right? It's a number of factors. For one, right, it's they're young in most cases, right? Like if they're a top prospect. B, you're coming over from Europe, especially Switzerland. It's a much different game, certainly from the American League. So that you have that just adjustment and style, right? That's is pretty considerable. And then the third thing is you're also just kind of trying to integrate, like you said, a moving train is a great analogy. You're trying to jump onto a team where, it's been together now for 5+ months. You're trying to get used to a new coaching staff. Maybe you have some familiarity, perhaps from, development camp or that sort of thing, or maybe some common relationships you may have. But for the most part, it's almost like you're being traded, and you're. I think one thing that depends is what type of situation are you going into? Are you going into a team that's playing off the string and is not really competing for a playoff spot? That tends to go a lot more smoothly because those teams, you're just coming into a little bit of a lower pressure type situation. If you're coming into a team that's a well-oiled machine, like say you were going to Hershey this year, well, they're going to be able to kind of give you a nice soft landing, right? Not have to kind of throw you right out there, so that's kind of the other end of that spectrum. A team like Laval, though, like probably going to be in the hunt March into April, and every game, every point's going to really be crucial there, and so there's that temptation to throw that player into the frying pan right away and see what you have. You're excited, and it's a good, obviously top prospect, but it does require some care in most cases to not give them put them into too much too soon. So
the mistakes just get magnified,
right?
Yeah.
And then I've seen situations too where it certainly can ruffle feathers too, right? Like, you have a team that's been together for the whole season. They've the guys that have been on that roster have fought to get a team to a certain spot, and then hey, you had this new guy coming in who's here to play 20 minutes a night, and that can certainly not always sit well with players, and especially that new face comes in and struggles. So it can be a mixed blessing for both player and the coaching staff as well. Like, you're potentially getting a good asset, to add to your club, but it does come with some potential pitfalls as well.
Yeah, well, it's a good point that it could ruffle feathers. There's veterans who are playing for next year's contract. We know already this season in Laval, there's been bad feelings about ice time. Nicolas Baudin was upset. His contract terminated and on and so on. But it's going to be interesting to watch and especially, as you say, if Laval is in the heat of a playoff run.
That's a great point. Contracts, I mean, playoff spots matter. Contracts really matter.
Yeah.
And, that's, guys are playing for next year's job. They're playing, obviously, for money. They're playing for their families, and especially in the case of some of the older players. So, that can definitely bruise some feelings and egos. And that's something where you really need a coaching staff to have those people skills to know how to navigate that, not only with the player coming in, but also with all the existing players that have been there all season and have fought together all year and have kind of built that camaraderie. And you're asking them to welcome a new face in, so that's a challenge in some cases for sure.
We like to talk about goaltenders, so let's talk a little bit of goaltending. Last time you were here, we talked about Kazimierz Kaskisuo, brought in and kind of had an immediate impact and went on a bit of a run. But let's talk about the spillover effect of having a veteran like Kaskisuo with the Laval Rocket. It seems to have steadied the ship, and for Jakub Dobes, it hasn't negatively affected. It's not that Kaskisuo is stealing the starts or anything like that. I think there was in the last week or so that Jakub Dobes got 4 straight starts, and in fact a back-to-back against Rochester, where he played extremely well. And it seems to have given the young man some confidence in his own game.
Yeah, a good veteran goaltender in that situation is like a co-pilot. And he's somebody that can hand over the controls and is able to sit back. But if there's an issue, he can jump right in, and that's exactly what Kaskisuo has been. I mean, he had that one rough start in Rochester a couple weeks ago, but other than that, he's been absolutely fantastic, right? .932 save percentage, obviously, a limited number of games, but a player that came in and like you said, immediately steadied the ship. I mean, that was a major issue for the Rocket for the first 2 months of the year, and it's the kind of thing that can really sink a season, right? Like if your goaltending just isn't there, and it obviously can have a spillover effect too, right, on the rest of the club. When there's not that confidence or that trust factor with your goalies, whether or not it's they're doing or not, it certainly can affect the team. And so you bring in a steady hand in like Kaskisuo, a guy who's been around this league for a while, and certainly he had European experience as well. And he just came in. Everyone knows that he's there if Dobes does stumble, but he's also willing to kind of stand back in the shadows and not agitate for playing time. And that's those guys are not easy to find, right? Like you want somebody that is both competitive enough to push the young prospect, but also team oriented enough to kind of put their own priorities off to the side. So Kaskisuo has been in a fantastic condition. It was a really, really good move that the Rocket made, bringing him in there, and really, frankly, may have helped save their season. And it's been great for young Dobes. And you have this goalie with potential, but obviously raw potential, and somebody that's had his ups and downs early in the year, and I think it gave everybody just that safety net. That's all right. You don't have to go out there if you're Dobes and save the day. You just have to go out there and play your game. And if you happen to have a rough stretch there, it's not going to cost the team because you do have that steady hand with Kaskisuo.
Before we let you go, as I said, we'd like to talk about goaltenders, and if you look around the league, obviously some great goaltenders. Dustin Wolf with the Wranglers, the pair of goaltenders, Hunter Shepard and Clay Stevenson in Hershey. But if you look in the category of wins, there's one Yaroslav Askarov with 18 wins. He also stands out when you look at goals against average. Askarov there with 217 goals against. And why would we want to talk about Askarov, a first-round pick? Not often you have for a goaltender as a first-round pick, but was 11th overall in 2020, selected by Nashville. And he's gotten into a couple of games for Nashville this year, but primarily he's been with the Milwaukee Admirals. But where do we know that name from? Well, Askarov, with Nashville wanting to make a splash at last year's draft, and the Canadiens having the number 5 pick, that it seems to be more than a rumor that the Nashville Predators dangled Askarov. Obviously, the Canadiens looking for a goaltender, and picked Jacob Fowler in the draft. But prior to that, it was rumored that there was a deal in place that could have sent Askarov to the Montreal Canadiens. So talk about him as a goaltender, the season he's had, and how well he's done in Milwaukee this season.
Well, it's funny, like how there's those connections, right, between him and the Canadiens, right? Like, he made his NHL debut last season in Montreal.
That's right.
With Nashville, right? So, like a player that you wouldn't necessarily really think would have much of a connection. He's in the Nashville system. He's with Milwaukee. They're obviously not a team that has much of a connection to the Rocket, for example. But if you kind of, as you've done, scratch a little bit below the surface, there is kind of that link that's between sort of a player and another club altogether. But I mean, this, for me, Milwaukee and Nashville have almost the ideal, if not the ideal, blueprint for how you develop prospects. Goaltenders included. You look at the players that have come through there. Everyone from Shea Weber, Pekka Rinne, UC Saros. I mean, Roman Josi. If you're playing in Nashville, there's almost a guarantee you're starting with Milwaukee at some point. They have that blueprint down. They go back all the way back to the days when Milwaukee was still in the former IHL. It's the only affiliate that Nashville's ever had. There's a huge trust factor there between the two sides, and they've always struck that balance between that winning and development, which is so tough to do in this league. And so with him, they had last year Devin Coley, very, very solid goaltender there to kind of help him along in his first full season. And then they brought in Troy Grosnick, a player that's been a top goaltender in the AHL for a long time. He came in this year to be kind of that veteran, that maybe that equivalent of a Kaskasuo in Laval. And it's just been a fantastic setup and a match. And it's exactly what you want to do. You want your first round pick, your top prospect, certainly to get the priority in terms of starts, but you also want someone back there that can both be that, like I said, with Kaskasuo, both that safety option as well as somebody that can push, right? And somebody that's really going to challenge a young prospect for starts and playing time. So he's a fun personality for sure. He has those celebrations, I think, that we've all seen at different points.
Quite a character,
yeah, definitely a character. Young goalie, 21 years old. Certainly has that path to the NHL. It's looking like, and it's just, I think when you have that well-worn trail, I guess I'd call it, that a young prospect can look at and say, okay, well, geez, look at who's come before me. Pekka Rinne made this same journey. UC Saros made the same journey. So there's that. I think that it helps sell it to the player too, that this is the right path for them to be on. And these days, I think especially that's important to sell that to players. So when they come to the AHL, they come with the right mindset and mentality. And Milwaukee has that then. It's certainly shown in the standings there. They have a 15-game winning streak, tying them for fourth longest in league history. They're really threatening to run away with the Western Conference. And, certainly a team that, could be a Calder Cup finalist come June and, maybe match up with Hershey, for example. And so that would be another fantastic opportunity for him, certainly go through another playoff run. They went to the Western Conference final last year, and he was certainly a part of that. And this would be certainly a great encore as well.
Well, we'll continue to keep an eye on Askarov, partly because, as you said, he's quite a personality, but more so because of his skill set. As Marty Barron said, that the kind of goaltenders that have controlled speed can move quickly, but always under control, and with the other reason of what could have been for the Montreal Canadiens if they had followed through.
And you never know.
And that's right. That's right. Absolutely.
Sometimes, maybe that first go round, there's not a deal to be had or a match there, but maybe both sides circle back at some point. I mean, and that second go around is where you do find that match. So certainly, I think a player, certainly one to keep an eye on if you're a Habs fan, and who knows, right? Like, you never know in this business, and just another little bit of intrigue, I guess.
Well, we're always intrigued when we have you on the show, and always educated and entertained. For those that want to follow Patrick Williams on X, on Twitter, it's P. Williams AHL. That's where you'll find him, and you'll find him every month here on the Canadiens Connection. We look forward to your next visit, Patrick, next month, and thank you again for being with us today.
Thank you. Always a pleasure here.
And thank you very much to Patrick Williams for that great interview. Love his knowledge of the AHL and all the Montreal Canadiens prospects. That was such a great conversation. And Rick, thank you for leading the way on that one. Yeah,
he's there's no one that knows more about the AHL than Patrick Williams. He sees all the teams, he sees all the prospects, and he has the experience. So when I asked him about what's it going to be like for David Reinbacher, to enter a league midway through or towards the end of the season, and he's able to understand what it takes for a European prospect to do that. I also liked that he said about Askarov, the Canadiens didn't bite the first time, but who knows in the future. And I'll just add that Yaroslav Askarov, last time I checked, he had won 11 starts in a row with Milwaukee Admirals in the AHL. Oof. 3 shutouts, .938 save percentage, and the Admirals, with his help, have won 15 games in a row, and have put them in a position where they might be able to move UC Saros. Talking about the goaltending market, there is that possibility. So thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Patrick, for an excellent interview.
Yeah, absolutely. And just before we head into our final break, we have our Canadiens Connection question of the week that we'd like all of our listeners to think about. And that is, which up-and-coming defenseman do you think will eventually make a bigger impact on Montreal's blue line? David Reinbacher, Lane Hutson, or Logan Mailloux? We want to make sure that we hear from you. And with that, it's time to take our final break. Stay with us. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
The Canadiens Connection is proud to be a partner of Rocket Sports Media, digital media publishers of sports and entertainment websites. Their mission is to build a worldwide network of sports fans who are informed, engaged, entertained, and connected. Learn more about RSM, its team, and its portfolio of brands at rocketsportsmedia.com. I bet you enjoy sporting your best Habs jerseys, dressing up your kids and pets in the cutest Habs gear, and showing off your decked-out hockey cave or fanning. Well, don't just show your friends, show your Habs. The Rocket Sports Media team wants you to boast your finest pictures for our global network of Montreal Canadiens fans. Include the hashtag #ShowYourHabs when posting your fan photos on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Then log on to showyourhabs.com to see your entries, along with photos and posts from Habs fans all over the world. A proud member of the Rocket Sports Media Network. If you're a business owner looking for the perfect platform to reach a targeted audience of customers, Rocket Sports Media is the solution. Our global hockey community provides unmatched social media reach to an attentive demographic of sports and entertainment fans. We can provide visibility to your company, helping you to engage and leverage this prime group of potential clientele. In addition, we also offer sponsorship opportunities for fan events and featured areas of website content, giving you name and logo recognition. Visit rocketsportsmedia.com to contact us regarding this unique marketing opportunity. For the most trusted source of news, analysis, and features about the Montreal Canadiens, log in to thn.com/Montreal, your year-round source for anything Habs related. That's THN.com/Montreal.
Welcome back to episode 283 of the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. You can follow at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and you can check out our website, canadiensconnection.fm. Also, just a reminder, you can text us anytime via the Rocket Sports text line. It's 5853-ROCKET. That's 5853-ROCKET. And great interview there from Patrick Williams. I know he's a busy guy, so I'd like to give him some stick taps and thank him for providing all that amazing information about Montreal's defensive and goaltending prospects, and just general information on AHL and prospects in general. Truly one of the best in the business.
Absolutely.
And I know that this Montreal Canadiens team always has something interesting going on. And here at Rocket Sports, we have you covered. Here's what you need to know. We cover the Montreal Canadiens for the hockey news, and you can find all of our content at thn.com/Montreal. All your Canadiens coverage in one place. Also, if you like our multimedia content, we have a YouTube channel that's we've got a lot of interesting content on there. It's just search at All Habs. You can find it there. YouTube.com/All Habs if you want to find it as well. On there, we have a couple different shows. Two of them hosted by Amy Johnson, the Habs Hockey Report, the latest episode entitled Stats on the Habs New Guys, plus which Montreal Canadiens prospects might be next man up. And she also hosts the Rocket Hockey Report. The latest episode of that is entitled Casimir Kaskazuo Almost Did This Against His Former Team. So tune into both of those to stay up to date on everything Habs and everything Laval Rocket. Hit subscribe, leave a like if you like what you saw, and leave a comment too. Amy's great at interacting with all of her viewers on there, and just a really good way of checking out everything to do with the Montreal Canadiens and the Laval Rocket.
And I'll just add one more thing, because Amy's everywhere. If you're watching or if you're listening to us on Saturday, the Saturday pregame show, you're going to want to tune into the Hockey News pregame show. And Amy guests on that show with Ryan Kennedy and Michael Trakos from the Hockey News, talking about the work that we do for the Hockey News at thn.com/Montreal.
And this podcast, the Canadiens Connection podcast, we've started putting this on YouTube as well. Last week's episode entitled Can Slavkovsky Conquer His Draft Class? You can find it there. If you like what you saw there, then also leave a like, leave a comment as well. We get tons of great comments on our YouTube videos. We have a few that we're going to read out a little bit later in this segment too. And make sure that you tap that subscribe button. That way you never miss a single one of our episodes, as this comes out, I believe, every Monday on our YouTube channel. Plus, we have a very special announcement. I know some people have already tuned into our live stream watch-alongs on YouTube, but with that, I will invite our Rocket Sports Media contributor and my co-host on these live streams to the show, one Nathan McCracken. Nathan, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great on this semi-cold, sunny Saturday. Thanks for asking. How are you doing today, Michael?
Pretty good. Doing my best to keep warm, but you know what? I'm pretty excited to have you on here. We have a very special announcement to make for this upcoming week.
Yes, we do. Coming up on February 22nd, you and I will be live streaming on YouTube as the Montreal Canadiens take on the Pittsburgh Penguins at 7 p.m.
Another edition of our Rocket Sports live stream watch-alongs on our YouTube channel at All Habs.
So mark your calendars and come watch this game with us.
And for those that haven't joined us yet, how can we describe this for them? How does this work?
Well, you will tune into the game on one screen, press mute, and join our live stream on YouTube. We will have a live play-by-play, scores, updates, analysis, and commentary, all while interacting with viewers via the live chat. It's the perfect way to add an extra layer of entertainment to your hockey game that night. And for those who haven't joined us before, we've added a new segment at the end of each game.
Yeah, make sure you stick around at the end of the game for our post-game show. We'll call it the last round, in which we'll provide a summary of the game. We'll go through all the highlights and important takeaways. Plus, that's another opportunity for our viewers to send in their thoughts through our live chat. And plus, on top of that, we do a great intermission show after the first period and after the second period.
Yeah, that is right. We have an intermission show entitled Nathan's Notes, where we break down the game and have a great topical discussions to keep everyone up to date.
Yeah, designed specifically to engage all of our viewers in the discussion. Did I mention yet we have that live chat going, so everyone can make sure that their voice is heard on that. So make sure that right now you head over to our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/allhabs. Hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell. That way you never miss a single one of our live streams along with our other content.
Yeah, we look forward to watching the game with you all on February 22nd at 7 p.m. as the Montreal Canadiens take on the Pittsburgh Penguins.
We look forward to seeing you there and having some fun with you. And thank you very much to Nathan for announcing that alongside me. Just make sure that you circle that date on your calendar, February the 22nd. Nathan and I will be hosting another live stream watch along on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/allhabs. Hit subscribe and tap that notification bell too, as I said a few times already. That way you never miss any of our content that we post on there, and you get notified right away as soon as we have an upcoming live stream. Also, make sure you subscribe to the premier Rocket Sports radio podcast on your favorite podcasting app, the Canadiens Connection podcast. You can find every single Canadiens Connection episode at canadiensconnection.fm. We're here every single Saturday to bring you the best Montreal Canadiens content, and we have a lot of fun doing it. We have lots of great guests along the way, like Patrick Williams that we had today, so make sure that you hit subscribe and never miss a single one of our Saturday episodes. Rocket Sports Media is your inside link to the Montreal Canadiens. And Rick, I think we have a little Rocket Sports Media team announcement. We're looking for some potential new contributors.
Why don't you join us? We have a great time. You hear the names, whether it's Christy or Amy or Michael or Nathan, Mike Raschel, on and on and on. We have a great team. Why don't you join us if you would like to write, if you'd like to help us with the podcast, be a producer, if you're really good at social media, if you're good at graphics, whatever it is that is your talent, we'll find a way for you to contribute to this wonderful Rocket Sports team. As you know, we contribute to all of the Montreal Canadiens content on the Hockey News, also the QMJHL content on the Hockey News. So if you have a interest in any of the Canadiens organization teams or the Q, we're glad to hear from you. Reach out to us on social media or send us a text at 585-3-ROCKET.
Absolutely. Looking forward to hearing from all of you. And now it's a good time to get to our Canadiens Connection question of the week. And to all of our listeners, we ask, which up-and-coming defenseman do you think will eventually make the bigger impact on Montreal's blue line? David Reinbacher, Lane Hutson, or Logan Mailloux. We want to make sure that we hear from you, and we get tons of comments, text, tweets, and emails throughout the week, and we had some interesting ones, particularly on our YouTube channel this past week. We lightly edit some of these just for clarity, and I'll start this one off. The first comment we want to get to comes on YouTube from Dark Matter Eclipse, and they say, WTF do you expect from Slav of this team of lackluster forwards and amateur coaching? Expect the 19-year-old to be a one-man show? The fact that he's on the first line tells you how lacking this team is. He will eventually be a true top six player, possibly first line. Hughes said he was drafted for size, the player he would be in 4 to 5 years, and not expected to score 50 goals in a season. Yes, too soon to evaluate. So that comes in reaction to last week's episode when we did everything about Juraj Slafkovsky, the episode entitled Can Slafkovsky Conquer His Draft? We did a full analysis, and we had a lot of fun doing that, so appreciate that comment. And Rick, what else did we find on YouTube?
Who's the amateur coach he's talking about? This is from Rick Bangle 5240 on YouTube. Rick says, Slafkovsky's current performance is simply performing to expectations. Nothing more. Remember, he was the number 1 overall pick. All right. We remember that he wouldn't have been categorized necessarily as the slam dunk pick, the not a generational pick. And so a lot is expected of a number 1 overall. As the previous commenter said, he is not expected necessarily to be a big goal scorer. So he, according to Rick, he's simply performing to expectations, and I respect that comment.
And one comment coming on Twitter from Jeremy Saindon. Jeremy says, I find it pretty astonishing you guys question Slav's hockey IQ. Did you see his pass to Suzuki just now? So, of course, we did talk about Slavkovsky's hockey IQ on last week's episode as well. That was a knock on him going into the draft. And Rick, what do you think about this?
It's funny because with fans, it's all or nothing, right? The player is either a bum or a god, and you cannot be objective and say he's good at this and needs to improve at that. Jeremy's saying that was watching the game. And it was against the Blues, and it was already 2-0. And he tweeted this: "Did you just see that pass to Suzuki that Slavkovsky made?" Well, deciding hockey sense on one play is probably not a very wise thing to do. And so I looked at the play that he was talking about. It was a nice pass by Slavkovsky for sure. The Canadiens were on the power play. This is the first period of the St. Louis game. As I said, they were down 2-0, probably midway through the first period. Slavkovsky's in the bumper on the power play, back to the boards, and he's surveying the ice, getting very little pressure from the Blues. The Blues forwards are cheating towards Matheson, so there's a big gap between the forwards and the defensemen. Suzuki's on the opposite side of the ice in the circle. Slavkovsky makes a cross ice pass. Suzuki one-timer, scores. It's a nice pass. Did you need elite hockey IQ to make that, to see that, to recognize what was happening? Slavkovsky wasn't in a situation where he's being pressured at all. There was a mistake by the Blues, a pretty wide gap. Slavkovsky took advantage. Great. We praised Slavkovsky. We talked about his improved confidence, the fact that he was playing on the first line, playing with good players, seeming to be much more comfortable. He was shooting more, getting opportunities on the power play. He was making strides in his physical game. We wanted to see him win some more battles, and that we wanted to see him drive the play. And the knock on him coming into the draft was his hockey sense, and that's all about. I mean, everybody who makes it to the NHL has some sort of hockey sense, or they wouldn't be there. The ones with elite hockey sense are the ones who can process the game quicker than it's being played. And we've seen that Slavkovsky struggles with that at times, that he's overwhelmed, that things are happening too quickly for him. And that's in all of his tool set, if that's the one thing that he's maybe doesn't have that others have, oh well, that's the way it goes. But like I said, Jeremy was upset for this one play that he saw some hockey sense, and question us for pointing out the fact that scouts have said that it's an area that Slavkovsky and if you're Marty St. Louis thinks can be improved.
So I think we hear abundance of different opinions, and we appreciate hearing opinions from all sorts of different people out there. This whole when we were analyzing Slavkovsky, we did our best to be pretty objective about it, and we wanted to do that too because Juraj Slavkovsky was a pretty big topic in and around social media and the news throughout that whole week. So we wanted to make sure that we touched on it, and we agree to. It's probably too early to analyze analyze whether or not he's going to be the best player coming out of that 2022 draft. So
we said that last week. We absolutely said that last week. It was our opinion that it was too soon to make that determination.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do appreciate hearing from all of our viewers and listeners. Continue to send us all of your thoughts and comments. 5853 is our Rocket Sports text line, 5853 Rocket, that is. And Rick, we have an email as well if people are interested in sending us a little bit more.
You can reach us via email at hello@rocketsportsmedia.com.
So coming up, the Montreal Canadiens have 3 games before we're here next. Coming up today on February the 17th, Washington is coming to town. A couple days off in between before it's a back-to-back. On the 21st, Buffalo visits Montreal. And then on the 22nd, Montreal goes to visits the Pittsburgh Penguins. And just a little reminder, too, head over to our YouTube channel during that game, as Nathan and I will be live streaming for another watch-along. We have a lot of fun doing that, and we'd appreciate if you tuned in and watched the game along with us.
Jake Allen on Saturday night against Washington, and we'll see how, as we've been talking about goaltenders and defensemen, we'll see how that goaltending market, whether anything happens this coming week.
For sure. So that's going to be a wrap for us today. Thank you all for tuning in and listening, and make sure that you're subscribed to the Canadiens Connection podcast in the player or on any of your favorite podcasting apps. You can also share it on social media if you like what you heard today. Enjoy the week. We'll be back here next Saturday, February 24th for another great episode. Thank you all for listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.